lagging behind and where we have to pay more attention on an objective basis and it will also tell us where we have to direct vital resources, and that in the light of very long-term plans, as I said, until 2030. So I think our colleagues in the regions, particularly in their meetings with industrialists and entrepreneurs, will be very interested in this. The various entities of the Federation need to know what tasks the state is going to address, particularly in the near future, and where we have to concentrate our resources. And, of course, production and equipment are the hallmarks of that whole process. We have to know where we locate new housing and the kind of volumes of housing that we need there. So this really furnishes the basis for our decision-making. Despite the pessimistic forecasts which resonate, which we've heard from experts, particularly Western experts, Russia is actually part of the 5 most important economically powerful countries in the world, despite all these pessimistic outlooks, as I said, and that based on PPR and the most important indicators of the economy. This whole period, of course, has been a very difficult one for Russian enterprise and industry. We know about that, and we are trying to overcome those difficulties. In the third quarter of this year, we have noted a sustained increase in productivity, and there has been a 4.9% increase in the GDP with regard to the same period last year. And this is not underpinned, this is not dependent on the petrochemical industry. We are noting something like a more than 6% growth there, and companies opening new industries and so on, and job creation are very important here, and that is what we are seeing happening. A whole number of indicators are very important here, and we're thinking about 75% increase in some areas, and we have noticed a real increase in the economy on a 3-year basis now. Very big investments by the state in cultural assets is stimulating the economy through private enterprise. And we hope very much that we will be able to continue this line. And this will allow us to make sure that the state finances are in a good condition. Essentially speaking, the economy is in a good shape, sustained growth, and we have seen a very big increase by a factor of 8 with regard to last year, and this is much better than last year. We hope very much that July, August, and September will note a surplus in the budget, and this will be something like 2% of GDP. Let me just repeat, that is obviously necessary to use all the resources of the state to make sure that all the various organs of state and government function properly. And of course, development is very, very important here. And we must ensure that people see that there is a real improvement in their standard of living. This affects actually all the plans and projects for 2023. I'd just like to give you a couple of figures here. First of all, there is the so-called first task, which is to solve the external trade with friendly nations, and our trade turnover with those actually increased enormously. With Eurasian countries, 14% increase is noted. And more, our foreign trade is being carried out in our own currency and in the currency of those countries concerned on the other side. And we've actually increased that by a factor of 4. And in fact, if we just look at trade with friendly countries, it's something like 70%. So we are going to continue this system to make sure that the payment system is changed. And we hope that this is reliable for our companies and for the companies on our partner side. Obviously, the Black Sea, South and Eastern regions are very important. We have seen in the last year a conspicuous improvement here in terms of trade. It's very important that infrastructure should anticipate these changes. It is only then that the plans will enable business to come up with new projects and plans. That is the roadmap, as it were, for the economy. Let me just add that it is important to monitor this situation continually and to solve this problem, all the problems that arise promptly. Beginning of this year, for example, there was a great increase in import containers from the Russian Far East, and we are determined to make sure that that happens also in the European part of Russia. We have to accelerate the transit of cargoes to solve that problem. In addition, the second main task is the making sure that we strengthen the technological sovereignty of our country and stimulate industrial clusters and cluster platforms. That's obviously a very complex task. We understand perfectly well that we haven't solved these problems yet, but we perfectly well understand that even if we are lagging behind there, the importance of it, and we hope very much that next year we will be investing more in the processing industrial sector, and we will be investing trillions of rubles there. Another very important theme is the training of specialists to make sure that we plug holes in the labor market where we actually need them, professionalism. And we will be concentrating on a whole number of industrial sectors at the highest level. So millions of people will receive jobs in this very high-tech sector. In addition, we have a special program in order to enhance productivity. This is one of our main tasks. Obviously, it's a huge one, but the measures are on the drawing board. It's obviously only a beginning. It's going to affect millions of people, thousands of industries. Colleagues have noted that the participants in this program are actually getting back very positive results, and productivity is rising. But obviously, we have to extend good practice there. We must also establish a federal training center and to make sure that that is on the required level of development. And here, of course, the weapon industry is very, very important. I'd be very much interested in hearing your ideas about that. We are not only interested in those sectors of industry, but also the financial services sector of the country. The Bank of Russia, together with the government, has put together a packet of measures to make sure that there is a structural adaptation happening in the country, which would include such sectors as machine tool industries, high-tech electronics, and so on and so forth. But I'd just like to stress here that these initiatives have to get more support from our development institutes. A separate individual aspect is something we've been talking about for a long time. It is about making sure that we have projects which can last over many years and bring in income. So we have to make sure that more investment is made into the economy in those areas. And as from 2024, we are seeing the launch of a program initiative to increase the standard of living, improve the standard of living of our citizens. And there will be a tax audit done on this so that it will create a cushion, a kind of contingency fund for emergencies. We have to come up with a new mechanism which is very, very reliable. So I would like to urge you to make sure that you include for next year all these key areas. In conclusion, I'd just like to dwell on another couple of problems. We have together talked about the importance of the equity market and the importance of increasing more investment into the country, particularly in the high-tech industries. And we have to do that irrespective of the economic climate in the world at large. Russian companies at the moment are, in fact, substituting for or replacing the investment platforms, and we've been quite successful here. The Bank of Russia is working on that, but there is still a lot to do. I'd just like to draw colleagues' attention to the fact that we really need palpable results here. And lastly, there's been a lot of volatility on the financial markets in the last couple of months, and these kind of tergiversations have thwarted our results. The Bank of Russia is using all the mechanisms which it has at hand. The government, too, particularly in terms of limiting non-productive areas of the economy and making sure that the financial market works to our advantage. A fourth task that we have already addressed is to make sure that the there are transport and housing infrastructure is will anticipate all these events in the economy, housing, hospitals, schools, and so on. This is an absolutely key element in order to improve the standard of living of our inhabitants. We have absolutely to concentrate on housing and improving that area. And I think that a good rate of new housing has actually been the case recently. More than 2 or 3 million families are going to be rehoused, and utilities as well. These are very good results if you compare it with 2021. In 22, it was 2.7 million square meters, and I hope very much that that will be much improved this year. We must continue to discuss these questions, which require continuous attention, and it is important that we do not lag behind. We have to make sure that we have a comprehensive development for our main areas of settlement. So obviously we need an anticipatory infrastructure development of all the most important areas of the country. More than 200 main projects are underway in the regions, in many regions of Russia, and loans of enormous sums have been allocated for that. And more than 341 companies have been helped, particularly in that area. And we hope very much that there will be a greater investment of 250 billion rubles. Just like to remind everybody that as from 2023, the road system must be modernized, must correspond to proper levels. And I am happy to announce that there has been 80% increase here. There is also the health initiative to increase the number of hospitals and clinics. That is in terms of primary care, and we have made sure that we have transferred enough funds in anticipation of all that in the health sphere. As far as general education is concerned, we have big plans there too. There will be capital repairs of more than 3,000 schools, and more than 5,000 will be completed by the end of the year. And we should see the creation of more than 25 university campuses fully equipped with sports facilities and so on and so forth. 17 such projects have already been adopted in Moscow, in Kaliningrad, and many other towns. I'm absolutely convinced that comfortable assets will make sure that we will be able to have a continuous flow of highly qualified graduates. and people who will go on, these graduates will go on to get good wages. We have to actually also very much concentrate on the improvement of living conditions for Russian families. Unfortunately, their standard of living went down by 1% last year, but that has already been improved by a factor of 4.5%. So, of course, inflation has taken a toll on that. It is an indicator we have to bear in mind. I'd just like to point colleagues' attention to the fact that the average wage of our work is one of the most important indicators of the success of our economy and determines new investment, which will lead to job creation and better assets, facilities. Neither should we neglect the work of civil servants and make sure that their wages correspond to the norm. This has to be carried out. The minimum wage, of course, is also another very important task. It has been raised by some 16%, and at the beginning of next year, we are envisaging an increase of 18.3%. This is faster than the rate of inflation. So this decision should have a positive effect on the revenue of more than 4 million workers. And of course, we will index salaries, continue to index salaries, and support families with low incomes. But in order to reduce poverty, we have to have a sustainable economy which is resistant to the inflation. I'd just like to draw attention to the following, though. We have been talking about this with colleagues. There are still inflationary trends afoot which are increasing. I'd just like to urge colleagues, particularly from the central bank, to pay particular attention to this. We have to essentially come up with economic policy. I know there are lots of divergent opinions here, but we have to make sure that this economy is aimed at improving the lives of the majority and to make sure that savings are guaranteed, particularly for families. And I am very happy to say that the levels have now been restored to pre-pandemic times. They went down during the pandemic, but now have come up again. So the quality of housing, the revenue of families, all this has been very positive, and I think that it shows that we are going along the right lines. However, demographic increase is still complex. It's true that the birth rate has gone up in relation to last year, but there is still room for improvement. We've talked about this before. and come up with particular instructions for the demographic problem. I'd just like to urge the federal government to cooperate as much as possible to make sure that this program is successful. We have to support families to a greater extent. We have to make sure that the downward trend is arrested and make sure that we don't have any birth rate falls as we have had during the last decade. Another pilot project to do with maternity leave will be launched this year, and this will particularly affect mothers going to work or the length that they can stay with their children. We hope very much that these conditions will be better for the majority of our citizens. The tasks which we are working on, we will continue to work on. We are very, very ambitious in this respect, and we are every specialist, every capital of every region will have to really put in tremendous concentrated effort here. As a whole, despite a lot of external and internal problems, the situation is stable, but we have to monitor it very carefully in order to take decisions which adjust things. But the basis of the state is a strong, sustained economy, as I've said many times, particularly at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum. And this has to be aimed at a sovereign economy which is able to respond to the variability in the financial markets and to increase productivity, particularly in industrial sectors which are weak. But I think that the progress which we've noted already will continue in order to come up with the proper economic proposals. We have to be in close contact with the regions and their governors and pay particular attention to governance initiatives. That's everything from me. Over to the Prime Minister. President, you have put forward a whole number of proposals at the St. Petersburg Economic Forum based on balancing the labor market, making sure that the construction industry works better. We've spoken about that together many times to try and make sure that efficiency is increased. I would just like to say something in greater detail about some of the areas you touched upon. First of all, investments. It is absolutely important that we accelerate investment in those sectors producing complex machinery. We have fantastic raw materials and so on, and engineering support. But in machine tool industry, the weapons industry, and so arms industry, uh, naval industry, shipbuilding, and so on are essential areas. And it's no secret that up to the limitations which were introduced from outside, we were quite dependent on imports. Yes. Hello. Waiting for Putin to appear.
Okay, David. So Ramaphosa's started.
What?
Ramaphosa's started, the South African president.
Yeah.
Then it's the Silva Brazilian president, and then, fingers crossed, it's Putin. Okay. So hopefully in 15 minutes' time, I'm gonna guess. Yeah.
They want to take this feed live. Are you?
Sorry, can you speak louder?
They want to take this feed live. So can you go on mute until Putin comes out? 'Cause
Right.
they can, yeah. They can
Okay.
hear you coughing and stuff
Yeah.
right now. They're just gonna go.
Ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, I am delighted to be able to greet the representatives of the BRICS countries, the business community, and experts who have come together for this meeting. I'd just like to point out that the regular meetings of this kind, which represent a kind of systemic work, bringing together leading businesses of the major countries of the five BRICS countries, play a very important role, particularly with regard to internal investment, communications, and the extension of dialogue between us. This will allow us to accelerate the social growth of our states and sustainable development. It is very important that the center of attention in the forum is the post-colonial development of BRICS countries' economies, the organization of industries, and the construction of effective communications and a just transition of technologies. These complex tasks are taking part, of course, against a background of extreme volatility on financial markets, and this pressure is prompted without doubt, by the irresponsible action of states to emit too much energy. And this has a serious negative influence on the world economic situation, and particularly with regard to the legitimacy of sanctions practice. The trampling of all rules of free trade and economic life, which we thought to be immovable before, is not acceptable. We see the strengthening of inequality, unemployment, and the exacerbation of serious problems, which has an effect on productivity and particularly the cereals industry or agriculture. And this has been particularly vulnerable. This has meant that some countries are particularly vulnerable to it. BRICS is based on cooperation and making sure that sustainable development and economic growth is at the center of our attention, and we can see palpable results now. The investment projects are particularly important. And the main thing is that we cooperate on the basis of parity, mutual support, and the respect of each other's interests. This is the essence of the future economic association which we are in. And of course, this is based on our global majority. Over the last decade, we have seen huge investment by a factor of 6 in BRICS countries, and their investments in the global economy have doubled, and the overall export has represents something like 60% of world trade. As far as Russia is concerned, our trade turnover with BRICS countries has increased by 40%, more than 40%, and this represents billions of dollars. In the course of this year, compared with the same period last year, it has actually increased by 35%. I'd just like to point out also that the share of the countries concerned in which billions of people live has actually increased by 25%. And in terms of PPP, it is in a very high position. It has gone up from 30% to more than 40%. This is an irreversible development in our area, and measures have been put in place to make sure that more trade transactions are made in local currencies. And as a result of that, the share of dollars has actually, or dollar transactions has reduced very considerably, something like 80% between BRICS countries. We will be discussing all of that in greater depth, particularly the introduction of local currency transactions in all spheres of trade. Without any doubt, we are reckoning a lot on the new development BRICS Bank, which is a real alternative to the current existing financial establishment. The main point of the BRICS countries, as we see now, is the strengthening of cooperation. And particular importance here has been the intermodal cooperative sovereign communications corridors. Russia is particularly interested in making sure that our investment flows go to reliable countries, including all the BRICS countries. We are particularly interested in the development of a north-south massive communications network, and we hope that this will be a very important north-south motorway, as it were, or locomotive for trade. As far as the northern tract is concerned, Russia is constructing an enormous infrastructure process, which is based on decades ahead, and particularly with regard to rail transport. And this has absolutely no analogy anywhere, and that also goes for the energy sector. And this means that we will be connecting up the Baltic area with the Persian Gulf. And we see a big increase in the trade between Eurasian and African countries. And this corridor will develop, particularly with regard to new production. Russia is in favor of strengthening cooperation with countries interested in production resources and energy resources. Agriculture, energy, fertilizers also for the global south, and this will lead to real growth in food and energy. All these questions will or have been discussed very recently at the Russian-Africa Summit,